If you love Notable New England, let the world know. Share a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. It helps other people find the show and become part of our Notable New England community. Tell a friend about the podcast or post about it and share a favorite episode on your social media. All of this helps to grow the podcast and spread more New England knowledge to the masses. Thank you for your support. On today's episode of Notable New England, I'll be telling you the tale of the heat wave of 1911. You think we've had it bad this week? Think again. The heat wave of 1911 was so bad, people went insane. Learn the story behind this moment in New England history. Stay tuned. Hello, lovely listeners, and thank you for tuning in to this edition of Notable New England. I'm your host, Gretchen B., and I am a lifelong and proud New Englander who loves our area of the country and believes in sharing the people, places, and stories that make this region of our country so great. I also want to encourage people to get out into their New England communities, meet your neighbors, and be ambassadors for this great place we all get to call home. Well, this past week has been quite hot, hasn't it? We've had a little bit of a heat wave here in New England, and I hope everyone has had a good 4th of July and was able to stay cool with the hot temps. The heat wave got me thinking about how lucky we are in this modern time to have air conditioners. And if you don't have an air conditioner, a lot of cities and towns have cooling centers that are open for residents so that they can go and have a place to cool off. Thank goodness for the oceans, ponds, rivers, and waterfalls in our region, too, that are great for taking a dip on a hot day. Well, did you know that back in 1911, New England experienced a heat wave that lasted 11 days and actually drove some people insane? Well, I'll be telling you the story of that moment in history on today's episode. But before we get into that, we're going to dig into some Wicked Light Bites, which are community-oriented stories and happenings from each New England state. It's safe to say Celtics Nation is wicked pissed that the team traded superstar Jaylen Brown to the Philadelphia 76ers for Paul George, a player who was injured and missed 12 games this past season and who only averaged 16.7 points in his 2 seasons with Philadelphia. The Celtics also got 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks for the trade. Jaylen Brown, beloved by the city of Boston and Celtics fans, has been a 5-time All-Star, and he has played in more wins when counting both regular season and playoff games in his 10-year career with the Celtics, which is more than any other player in the league over that time. Jaylen Brown was also very active in the Boston community and worked to help underserved neighborhoods and various charitable organizations during his career in Boston. Even more of a stinger, the 76ers eliminated the Celtics during the first round of the 2026 playoffs. Jaylen Brown helped carry the Celtics to the playoffs for the past season when Jason Tatum had to miss most of the season due to an Achilles tear that happened during the 2025 playoffs. Brown had his best career yet this past season with 28.7 points, 6.9 rebounds, and 5.1 assists per game. Due to the fan backlash, President of Basketball Operations for the Celtics, Brad Stevens, deactivated his Instagram account amidst the trade news. probably a good idea because the fans are not happy, to say the least. Information for this item comes from NBA.com News Services, and I took a peek at the no longer operating Instagram account of Brad Stevens before he deactivated it. Two Concord, New Hampshire youths won the gold medal at the U.S. Rowing Youth Nationals. Micah Lown and Isaac Petrenko are part of the Friends of Concord crew and have been rowing partners for 3 seasons. They advanced to the national championship after qualifying and went on to beat their toughest competitor, Black Sheep Racing. The boys were in the lead, but halfway through the race, Black Sheep Racing passed them. Quote, "It started getting frightening," Isaac Petrenko said. He continued, quote, "We pulled so hard. That's the hardest I've ever pulled in a boat. We took a whole boat length lead on them into the last 5 strokes of the race. It was a championship worth winning, and it felt earned because of those last 350 meters with Micah," end quote. The boys finished with a 2.63-second lead on Black Sheep Racing. Micah Lown said, quote, "I couldn't have done it without my double buddy. It can't just be anyone. It has to be the person that you've been doing the most miles with on the water. You have to trust that person a lot. That's one of the key things with rowing with another person. Trust. That's what really helps move the boat," end quote. Information for this item comes from Lila de Almeida at the Concord Monitor. The Oakland Beach Revival Society in Warwick, Rhode Island have been busy painting 2 murals on the sides of Oakie's convenience store in an effort to beautify the coastal neighborhood. The murals are inspired by 2 old postcards the president of the Oakland Beach Revival Society, Angela Stamulus, found when researching the neighborhood. She says, quote, "The postcards really tell the history of the beach. We're trying to connect the past to the future," end quote. She says the neighborhood developed a reputation for being run down and neglected, and, quote, "That's not what it is anymore, but the stigma persists. Our main concern is with those who come to visit because we want them to respect it," end quote. Angela Stamulus says that she wanted to have the murals painted on the sides of Oakie's convenience store because it is a fixture along Oakland Beach Avenue. Quote, "Everyone sees it when they're driving to the beach. We want everyone to notice the businesses here, and we also want to draw attention to the history of the beach," end quote. Information for this item comes from Sarah Bodden and Johnny Villela at WPRI 12. A historic farm in Hamden, Connecticut is up for sale. Hindiger Farm has been around for over 130 years, and Elizabeth Hindiger, one of the owners, says, quote, "We're looking forward to a new chapter in our lives," end quote. The farm, located on Dunbar Hill Road in Hamden, has been in operation since 1893. Elizabeth says, quote, "So many things have gone up. Our insurance, our labor, our metal, our repairs, just basic costs of goods. If we don't have to work 90 to 100 hours a week, I'm good with it," end quote. The 120-acre property is on the market for $3.1 million. The property can only be sold as a farm due to an agreement made in the 1980s to avoid a developer being able to take over. Information for this item comes from Melissa Cooney at NBC Connecticut. Brattleboro, Vermont now boasts the state's first level platform as part of Amtrak's nationwide program to make all stations ADA compliant. The station is 10 years in the making and cost $10 million. In addition to the level platform, the station has 2 ramps leading up from the parking area, new lights, and a heating system that prevents snow and ice from building up. There is also an ADA bathroom and covered waiting area. The station is the southernmost stop on Amtrak's Vermonter line, which continues on to New York City and Washington, D.C. Amtrak worked with local artists to build and install a ceramic mural recognizing Brattleboro's literary history. The art installation includes cell phone links to stories about authors such as Robert Frost, Saul Bellow, and Rudyard Kipling, all who had spent time in southeastern Vermont. Information for this item comes from Howard Weiss Tisman at Vermont Public. A federal judge has ruled that the Delhi, a 2-masted schooner that once carried granite paving stones and sank more than 130 years ago, belongs to the state of Maine. Southwest Harbor Maine Company JJM LLC hired a private diver back in 2023 to investigate the wreckage, and they've been fighting the state of Maine for ownership and salvage rights of the wreckage. They argue that without them, the ship and its artifacts would have never been recovered. A federal judge ruled, though, that the shipwreck is considered abandoned under federal laws and is under control of the state of Maine. The site of the shipwreck is also eligible to be included in the National Register of Historic Places. Information for this item comes from Nicole Orgrisco at Maine Public. Coming up next, I'll be telling you about the 11-day heat wave in New England that happened in 1911, one of New England's worst weather disasters that drove people to the brink of insanity. If it doesn't make you thankful for your AC and modern technology, I don't know what will. Stick around. You're listening to Notable New England. If you've been enjoying Notable New England, I want to let you in on something. Everything you hear is created entirely by me. There's no production team, no writers, no researchers, no social media manager, just one person. Hi. Doing all the behind-the-scenes work to bring these stories to life. If you'd like to help keep the show going, there are 2 easy ways to support with a financial contribution. You can join my Patreon. Monthly memberships start at just $2 a month and include early ad-free listening. Depending on your tier, you'll also get fun extras like Notable New England merch and curated New England goodies. To see what works best for you, visit patreon.com/Notable New England. That's patreon.com/Notable New England. If you'd prefer to make a one-time gift, visit buymeacoffee.com/Notable New England. This is like a virtual tip jar where you can chip in a few bucks whenever you feel inspired. That's buymeacoffee.com/Notable New England for a one-time gift. These contributions truly make a difference. They help cover the real costs of producing the show and allow me to keep sharing the people, places, and stories that make New England so special. If you've ever learned something new, discovered a place to explore, or just enjoyed an episode, this is one of the best ways to support the work behind it. Thank you for being here. Before we begin, if you find the topics of weather, disasters, and death triggering, this segment is not for you. It might be best if you tune out now and join me next time or listen to one of our older episodes instead. Listener discretion is advised. This past week, New Englanders experienced a heat wave with temperatures in the hundreds in many areas, and some historical temperature records were broken. A heat wave is defined as a period of unusually hot weather that typically lasts 2 or more days. To be considered a heat wave, temperatures have to be outside the historical averages for a given area. This is according to the National Environmental Satellite Data and Information Service. These days, we are lucky to have modern conveniences such as air conditioning, cooling centers in towns and cities for residents without air conditioning, and more contingencies in place to help keep residents safe. But back in 1911, the Northeast experienced an 11-day heat wave. There was no such thing as AC, nor were there the modern conveniences we have now. And as a result, the heat wave of 1911 was deadly and was one of New England's worst weather disasters in history. In 1911, June temperatures were pretty average with what was to be expected for that time of year. Now, you have to remember that in 1911, weather forecasting was not what it is today. There was no 24/7 obsessive coverage of the weather. There was no such thing as long-range forecasts or even heat emergency notices or things like that we have today and that we take for granted. People pretty much went about their days mostly not even really thinking about the weather, unlike how it is now where you can wake up and know just by going on social media or tuning into the news what the long-range forecast is going to be, and you have plenty of time to prep for most weather emergencies. So people in 1911 are just going about their days having no idea what is to come. On July 2nd, 1911, reports indicated that heat and humidity started to creep in and settle all over the Northeast, including New England. And this resulted from a strong flow of hot, dry air from the southern plains, which built west of the Appalachians, moved north into Canada, and came down from the mountains to the coast. By July 4th, 1911, temperatures rose drastically on account of the ocean breezes being suppressed. It was reported that temperatures got up to 103 degrees in Portland, Maine, 104 degrees in Boston, Massachusetts, 105 degrees in Vernon, Vermont, 106 degrees in Bangor, Maine, and Nashua, New Hampshire, 110 to 112 degrees in the shade in Hartford, Connecticut. Colwell's store in Cumberland, Rhode Island reportedly hit 130 degrees. And in Woodbury, a farmer reportedly stopped working when he saw his thermometer hit 140 degrees. Can you imagine that? Fire hydrants around New England were flushed to cool off the streets. Trolleys and ferries were offering free rides to people, and many would ride on them all day to try to get some whiff of a breeze, whether from the ocean or man-made breeze from riding on the trolleys. Factories were shut down and mail service stopped. Trash began to pile up everywhere. Many flocked to the beaches to cool off in the water, and beaches and parks were opened up so that people could sleep there at night, while others took to porches, fire escapes, or roofs of buildings to sleep, with some falling to their deaths. 5,000 people reportedly slept on the ground at night in the Boston Common during the heat wave, and it was described as the biggest boarding house in New England. Reportedly, many mothers were out in the streets at night, carrying their crying babies to try to quiet and comfort them, and because they feared that if they left them in their cribs, they might not wake up. People were collapsing from the heat. Horses were collapsing from the heat and dying. Some tarred roads were even boiling like syrup, making traveling down them impossible. There were several train derailments because the heat bent the tracks. Drownings occurred when people were trying to swim to cool off. The heat was even making people so delirious that some had mental breakdowns, some committed suicide, or committed violent crimes. Deaths are so rampant that undertakers can't keep up with the burials, and newspapers are printing a roster of deaths each day and the causes of deaths in the newspapers. Farmlands were drying up. Farm animals were dying, and dead fish lined brooks that had dried up so much that they looked like puddles. A week after the heat wave started, a line of thunderstorms came through the region and broke the heat wave, but it was short-lived as temperatures drastically rose again the next day. On the 11th day of the heat wave, another thunderstorm and pouring rain came down through the region, and a breeze finally brought the temperatures down and offered relief to long-suffering New Englanders. In the end, it's been reported that over 300 people died during the heat wave in New England alone. 2,000 people died in the Northeast as a whole. The heat wave of 1911 is considered one of the most devastating weather disasters in New England history. Now, we know New Englanders nowadays are very prone to complaining about the weather, and I'm certainly one of them when it comes to heat. But after learning about this heat wave of 1911 and the fact that none of the modern conveniences we all take for granted existed, and there was not the obsessive following of the weather there is now, so there was no warning that this was going to happen, I'm grateful to have air conditioning and things to occupy my time indoors if the weather gets really hot. I'm grateful that we have advanced weather forecasting technology and experts, even if it's not perfect, because, can you imagine having no idea that this was coming and not being able to be prepared for it? I can't imagine how awful it would have been in 1911 and the devastation this weather event wreaked on families. So the next time you want to complain about the heat, and I am speaking to myself too when I say this, take a moment and reflect on this story of the heat wave of 1911 and be very, very glad that you are not living in that time. Don't take for granted the modern luxuries and conveniences and innovations that we have nowadays. We are truly blessed. Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Notable New England. I hope you learned something new about our region's history and that you have more of an appreciation for air conditioning and modern conveniences. I know I do. Please make sure to check out the show notes for my research sources and to read more in-depth coverage of the heat wave of 1911, as well as to see photos from that time, too. It's quite a fascinating bit of history in our region. I'll be back on Sunday, July 19th with a brand new episode of Notable New England, and I hope that you'll tune in. Until next time, take care, everyone.